that may be the most seamless transition into that intro that has ever taken place in the history of using that intro. Whoever whoever watches this subsequently will get to share in that joy.
That's
Uh, so I think I forgot um, sponsors last week. So I guess before I get too much further, we should acknowledge them. And of course, these guys, Meds Cafe, and all these people and companies.
Jazz Cafe is, of course, sponsored by D Reductions, Real Leaf Solutions, White Nutrient Company, GrowGreenMI.com, Customs, Culturebuilding.club, and Meds Cafe.
That went in and out, just so you know, as far as how the mic or the connection. I'm not sure which one.
I'm sure that I'm on perfect time and the entire world is blinking, and that's what the problem is.
That could be it. That could be it. And Adam starts us off here with some yo-yos. And speaking of yo-yos, we are joined by the infamous Michael Toohey.
Michael Toohey.
Two E's. All right, there you go. Nice. Spartan amidst the few people getting started with us. Very cool. Appreciated. Great show. Michigan Bros Grow Show. So, Michael was on Medical Mondays last night too, and as probably a lot of people have heard, um, he was charged for the raids that happened, over the summer, and that sucks. And of course, he's going to challenge it. He's hired Camorn. Um, there's willingness from Meds Cafe CEO and great cannabis attorney Joshua Covert to chip in and help out, and Michael's happy to have the support. So hopefully that unfolds, and it's going to require some resources to challenge a lot of this stuff and to really push back on some of the stuff that has been imposed on Michael now, and so in part I wanted to let people know that there is a GoFundMe out there. Josie Scoggin, our great friend, and Sons and Daughters in Glen and Redemption have helps out lots of people. Um, help to initiate this to get it started. I know that Josh and Josie helped to get a fundraiser going at the offices in Lansing earlier too, and just want to encourage further support and help them out, help all of us out in this process. How you doing, man?
You're on mute, Michael.
Muted.
Sorry. Thanks for having me on, guys. I'm doing all right today. Back in the office this afternoon, getting some orders ready, filling out, doing paperwork, working on some agreements. It's just trying to stay at it. There's after the raid, the first couple of months was really tough. Like a lot of triggers from my, PTSD and previous issues with law enforcement. I got pretty depressed. I was down, trying to decide what to do, which direction to go. And I really gotta say thanks to the community, like the reaching out and the support and everybody over the last couple of months, like since this happened in the beginning of October, has really been great. It's not been what it was like the first time around, but people are struggling, and it's not, the industry is not in the same position, but the kind words, the support, the people wanting to help, to be involved. Some licensing agreements that I was working on throughout the year, like I was worried that it would scare off some of the people I was working with, and they've stayed behind me, so I'm getting ready to launch what is going to be the Toohey's brand, with two companies so far with those licensing agreements. that really believe in like what we've always done, our medicinal focus, and keeping our unique and diverse, unique product in the market that still should have a place in the licensed market. So it isn't just about the GoFundMe. I do have Great Lakes hemp supplements. I've done CBD products for over 11 years now. Traveled as an educator with that CBD and hemp over the last decade. So we still have GreatLakesHempSupplements.com. Great CBD products. We have a CBN product on there for sleep now, using our local tart cherry concentrate, as well as dehydrated tart cherries. And then,
Is that a type? The tart cherry?
Montmorency tart cherries. It's our local Traverse City cherries.
They're okay.
Yeah, it's one of the local cherries.
Extraction from the cherry. Okay, that's cool. All right.
Yep. So we do dehydrated cherries, the tart cherries, and then the CBD cherry drops. We won out in Denver the first year they went legal at the 2015 Cannabis Cup. We took third place over some of the biggest companies out there, like Mary's Medicinals and Charlotte's Web and the Stanley Brothers. When we took that award for third place, best CBD edible, but that's made with a cherry concentrate, so kind of like an extract, but it's the tart cherry concentrate, and then we use Sleeping Bear Farms honey, so it's like a cherry elixir instead of like the tinctures and all the synthetic additives and flavoring that everybody uses. It's other than the coconut oil, because we don't have no coconut trees, palm trees or coconut trees here. We have, everything else is locally made right here in Traverse City, from the cherries, the honey, down to the CBD product.
You bring the cherries in from Washington State, though, right?
No, I have the ability. I'm lucky I get to work with a local co-op. I get to go right down over into Williamsburg and pick up, the cherries right directly from the factory, and work with even which farms they came from in the area. So that's pretty cool.
I say that because, usually by the time the actual cherry festival in Traverse City goes on, the local cherries aren't ready yet, so they bring some in to have some for that celebration.
Yeah, actually, it became
Michael.
The Turkey. We get a lot of cherries from Turkey.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Who would know?
Go ahead, Rick.
Michael, what were the charges that they filed against you? I'm just now hearing this. I guess I missed it.
No, it's all right. It's just been the last couple of days. So the actual charge against me, the charging document that I will be arraigned on, December 19th, so next week, is one count of manufacturing marijuana over 200 plants. It is a 15-year felony. And then because I'm a habitual offender, the fourth habitual in Michigan automatically carries life. So that with that enhancement, the 15 years is enhanced to a life offense.
There's some issues with that on the surface. I mean, the lawyers really need to look at that, obviously. I mean, I'm not going to, claim that, this is absolute, but your previous felonies took place before the passage of the MRTMA, and that was an excessive, potential excessive plant count that you have, but that's post MRTMA, and wasn't associated with you, selling it or, some other associated issues that aren't covered in the, by the act that claims that, that unless it's habitual or you're, profiting and some other, wrongs, that it's, not to be given severe, attention and stuff. And so that really should be the lens in which this gets looked at, but that obviously it's not accepted or understood in all courts or by all prosecutors around the state. And then of course, from what you've explained before, there's other issues with, looking at it as violation of MRTMA or violation of hemp laws instead of carrying out other possibilities like the MMMA, or something like that too. So it just seems like a weird one. And I know that, and they should know that you're very likely to probably challenge, these things, which is kind of, in part what we're talking about too.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really up for a plea bargain. there's, there's really no room to budge. There's only one count, and um, you know, I don't, I might have got a little bit lax or complacent on some certain things, or might not have, renewed all my documents I should have for some of my, with my patients and things, but
Does that warrant a paramilitary invasion,
right,
onto your
right.
property and then burning of all your plants before they really understand what they're doing there?
Well, we showed them for like the last 12 years prior to this, so that we've always been on point, and every time they've come around for their checkups and things of that nature, that this is just really excessive. If yeah, and I haven't been told to to close my business. I haven't been issued a cease and desist letter. I haven't been told that I needed to change how I operate, or so it's just really interesting how they choose to handle this situation when I thought we were really beyond these situations.
Yeah, it's intense. I mean, Shelly joins us.
Hi,
Shelly Smith, how you doing?
I'm good. I've been missing out on all the news, wrapped up in other things, so I was hoping to catch up today.
Well, unfortunately, we're talking about the charges that came post raid at Michael Tuohy's property, and charges on Michael for felony for too many plants, which is like it's like one of those.
Wait, where is this?
Traverse City.
Yeah. Yeah, it does seem
Just so stupid.
Yeah.
And they
We're
burned
wasting
all the
resources.
plants. Just burned them all right there.
Yep. So well, that's clearly has to create an argument for your defense team, though. They can't prove that 200 cannabis plants there were cannabis because they didn't sample all 200 cannabis plants. They burned them. So at most, they can prove whatever they sampled. Isn't that correct? I mean, come on. It seems like this is bullshit.
Yeah, it'd be really interesting to see. I mean, even how they count plants, and the number of plants in the cloners versus, different stages. You can sell cannabis seeds anywhere now. It's funny, funny story. So earlier in the spring, I always sell clones, right? I've sold clones, seeds for years and years. I'm specialized in CBD genetics. So we do THC genetics for our patients that all want to, grow for their outside. I've helped licensed companies fill their genetics to start off their rooms, right? Genetics has always been one of my things. So this spring I put a rack of clones on the sidewalk in front of my building. Okay. And I'm next to like a nonprofit group that like works with homeless people, and they allow like people to come in and hang out during the day and play pool and do this. And they got a food pantry and this stuff. So we work with them next door. And one of the guys came by that was going to the food pantry and took a couple plants off my rack out front. Right now, as far as I'm concerned, right, like hemp is hemp, right? Like plants are plants. The government's all said that if it's under 0.3, right, they can sell seeds in gas stations now. It's kind of crazy across the board. But the neighbor seen the guy take a plant off of my rack that was out front. And I literally had it outside on the sidewalk, like so everyone can see it driving by. And I figured, screw it. Like, it's slow. I need some advertising. This will catch some attention. So the guy takes a plant. The neighbor calls the cops on him for the plant, taking the plant, right?
Oh, my God.
So I tell my office manager, she calls me. She's like, this just happened. The neighbor called the cops for the homeless guy taking a plant. And I says, I'll be right back. Like, I only ran to the bank. I says, nobody needs to call the cops. Like, I care less if some homeless guy takes a plant. Like, we give away product all the time. I don't, like I'm not even worried about it. It's a clone. And so I come back, I go over there, I talk to the guy. 2 minutes later, a state cop shows up. So the state cop talks to me. I'm like, I don't want to press any charges. Like, I'm not worried about the plant. I actually got the plant back from the guy because everyone was making a stink about it. I just went over there and talked to him and got the plant from him. Like, nobody wanted to even confront the guy about it. I'm like, oh my goodness. Okay. So the cop then turns in, it's a female officer. She turns in the report. All right. I don't hear anything about it. This same female officer shows up at my raid and was one of the cars that I had to sit in while they were searching my property. There has to be one marked car on the scene with all the undercover cars. So I'm sitting in the marked car all day. So she comes up, she shows up for the relief shift, right? So she comes in at like 2:00 and relieves the other officer. And I'm talking to her. It takes me a minute to realize where she looks familiar from. And I'm like, oh, like you did that report for the guy stealing my plant at the beginning of this season, right? And she says, yeah. And she says, would you believe the prosecutor authorized charges against that guy for stealing your plant? I said, I got it back. What'd they even charge him with? Right? Yeah. And I look at her, I said, isn't this insane that the prosecutor authorized a charge against a homeless guy for stealing my plant? But you and all of your law enforcement brothers and sisters are on my property today stealing my plants. Like the irony of that whole situation, like this cop filed a report and got a homeless man in trouble for taking one of my plants. But now you're back burning my entire harvest. I'm sitting in your car watching the smoke billow across my property.
I know he stole the plant, and that's been established, but isn't there some level of value associated with it that makes it of any real kind of concern? Like value of one plant or one small plant, isn't necessarily.
Well, that's clearly
that
why
high.
she didn't take him into custody at the time, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the police officer, the trooper on the scene realized it was such a low level. She didn't take any enforcement action. She just wrote a report. So that's what the prosecutor should have done too, taking no enforcement.
She never expected the guy to get prosecuted. Like, I'm like, you guys just gave the guy a chance to just sit in the cell for the winter and collect a free meal. That's exactly what he wanted. By the time he goes to court, it'll be January, and he'll take his 2 months in jail and be happy about it. Like, you guys, like the system is so twisted. Well, I just thought that was, a funny story to share. Like the irony of like the system and the reverse and everything's backwards and nothing ever makes sense. And you can't ever get a straight answer out of anybody as to what we're supposed to do or how to do it. Or, it's just wild.
Continue to view cannabis as something that it is not and make a huge deal out of it. And it's serious, but it's still stupid.
And
there's that training mission. Michael, you said one time that they told you that it was a training mission that they were doing, training new guys how to do this for the marijuana and tobacco. Isn't that correct?
No, I didn't see that or mention that as like a training, but it was more of like they've never received training. Okay, so like our funds and our budget, our laws delegate that they're supposed to receive training and education onto how to work with our cannabis laws. And this enforcement agent that was the lead detective still was clueless about the Medical Marijuana Act and compared the Medical Marijuana Act to old draconian laws that were still on the books and irrelevant, like those of sodomy and tying up your horse. Right. So it's like he was there to investigate a cannabis law or cannabis involvement, but he had no understanding of like all three laws that are on the books, and that's where Michigan is confusing because our state has really created, an uneven landscape where like you go to towns like Kalkaska that have unlimited licenses, and then you got cities like Detroit that's still in lawsuit, like Traverse City, of like trying to even get medical approved. Right. So like where we allowed these communities to have a vote and a say in whether or not they wanted them, it really created, this whole uneven and unequal landscape across the state of Michigan where patients are forced to drive, 20, 30 miles to the next town over because their town has never opted in or chose not to have any participation. And again, it's all based on old lies and reefer madness and, what could be versus like what actually is, and all these fears that are still around the old reefer madness campaigns around cannabis, which is, we've seen, it's all false. It's
It is
lies.
still out there. We've seen it even recently. We were going to discuss a little bit about some trends in the news, kind of related. There's seems to be a gang pile from big money interests, many of whom influencing some of the stuff that we're talking about. A focus on what they're calling the black market activity, or however they want to label it and stuff. And I know Shelley Edgerton from Live Wells was involved in one. Jerry Millen from Greenhouse was in one, and then on top of that, there was the article about the excessive calls to the poison center, or the child. I forgot how they worded it. Is another ridiculous kind of misframing of what it was actually going on. And we have that kind of stuff happening to help present this stuff. Rick, you know what I'm talking about.
So Crane's Detroit Business this yesterday put out a series of 4 articles all on the same day. They included 3 op-eds and 1 article. The article talked about the need to shore up the market from illicit product coming in, illicit product all through the article. The 3 op-eds were one from Shelley Edgerton, who is the acting leader of the Michigan Cannabis Manufacturers Association, the state's most hated trade association. Hey, here's a joke. Why doesn't the MCMA have a summer annual? Because 2 guys in a room by themselves is not a party. Ha! So in addition to the Shelley Edgerton op-ed, we also had Jerry Millen from Greenhouse doing an op-ed. He talked about the real fact that there are people out there that cheat the system, and that we have now Director Brian Hanna in order to help correct that. And he's already taken some enforcement actions. Of course, many of those were started months and months ago under different administration. But when the bust happens on your watch, you get the credit for it. The third op-ed was from Cannabis Regulatory Agency Director Brian Hanna himself, who said there's a lot of misinformation about me out there. This is who I am. He explained his parentage. He explained his connection to the community and his upbringing in Dearborn, and then talked about his goals for the agency going forward, which is essentially what we've already known. He's looking forward to cleaning up the bad actors and helping to correct what he sees as a wrong. Here's the other thing Jamie mentioned. In addition to those 4, the 3 op-ed and the article in Cranes, today we see an article on WXY titled "Michigan Sees Massive Increase in Marijuana Poisonings with Young Kids."
Yeah. That was it.
Now, let's add that on top of a recent notification that was given when Brian Hanna was named permanent director of the Cannabis Regulatory Agency as opposed to just acting director. Included in that press release was a quote from Shelley Edgerton, the chairperson of the 2-member Michigan Cannabis Manufacturer Association, right? So the fact is we had Edgerton in a press release from the CRA. We have Edgerton and the CRA director having op-eds in the same exactly the same day. By the way, Edgerton in hers warned that there is already draft legislation out there to stop licensing any new cultivation centers in order to try and put a check on the supply in the marketplace. We'll talk about that in a minute because it kills small business and advantages those large corporations that already have multiple licenses and they're not using all their capacity yet. So
Well, that's not even allowed in our
Edgerton
law, is
was
it?
so close. Say it again, Mike.
So that's not even allowed in our law, is it? Like we have an open market, like they can't close the cap on or put a cap on licenses according to
They
the
would
law.
have to have a 3/4 supermajority in both the House and Senate, and a governor willing to sign the bill in order to make that change to the thing. Because Michael is absolutely right; it is totally against the law for them to put a limit on licenses right now. It would have to come to the legislature. I believe Shelley is projecting what the legislature is going to be hit with right off the bat in 2023, when we have an all Democratic House, a Democratic Senate, and control of the governorship as well. Shelley Edgerton, who's more known with Republican conservative sources, might be out of her element in the leadership, but I believe she'll have plenty of allies in order to get it done, because money talks. And the one thing her organization has, seemingly, is bucks.
And that's one of the things that really
that's a lot,
me.
but
Scares me about my
You go ahead.
situation is as we see all the time, is that they just don't honor the law. You know, mentioned it and talked about it for a minute, but it's, you know, every time we make a rule, like the state's constantly fighting us back. We make a law, they fight it. We pass the MMA, they pass the MFLA, we pass MRDA, right? It's then they start making rules how to regulate our programs again that we passed, and that's the only thing that really about, like, we've got great attorneys in the state of Michigan. I've got all confidence in our attorneys that I have available to help with me in this case in the state of Michigan. They're not cheap, so again, the donations going through Sons and Daughters United, through the nonprofit. Some, if anyone needs, I believe you can get a tax write-off, so that way your donation can be tax deductible if it's over at least a certain percent amount. I'm not sure exactly how that works. I don't recall. But again, though, all proceeds going through them is going directly to the attorney fund. Like, I will not see, touch, handle, deal with any of those funds. That's why I really appreciate Josie taking it on and doing that for me. It just takes the headache away from me that they can communicate, and I can just focus on my case and getting my brands and getting my life back together for a minute. While we just kind of push the GoFundMe and see if we can cover the attorney bill that way. So that way, a little easier for me to get by. Again, the website, Great Lakes Hemp Supplements, we still have product available, but sorry, I squirreled. But what I was saying is just the honoring the law. Like, every time we do something, the state chooses to not honor the law, the will of the people, the voice of the people. They don't honor the vote. That's been such a huge issue, and it's not just in cannabis, it's across all government platforms. It's been a huge topic of conversation over the last few years. And so that's the only thing that really scares me when it comes down to it is whether or not they will honor the law, because I can have the best defense team that the state has to offer. But we've seen Traverse City not honor the law. We've seen the state of Michigan not honor the law, where we have to sue them over different testing, sue them over different procedural issues. I had to do that with everyone for the right to be able to use medical marijuana while on bond, probation, and parole, where Traverse City chose to just blatantly disregard the law. And so at the end of the day, that's really the only thing that's really is scaring, or like still weighs on me, is that, as much as the law is in our side and in our favor, and all of us here have worked so hard to pass these laws, that the state many times, we've seen in the past, just doesn't honor our law.
It's certainly conveniently interpreted at times, depending on where the biases are, and until there's some type of other overriding precedent set or changed by the legislature or something like that. We've had that consistent battle for several years now. Set of opinions by shooty, weren't designed with broadly and liberally interpreting what the MMA means. I mean, we all know that he wrote these obstructionist opinions to help influence in a particular direction.
And then they still stand though, because our attorney generals never wrote anything to counter them, right?
Hoping one of the things she could do would be to turn back some of those very prohibitive, restrictive interpretations and that type of thing. That hasn't happened yet. Maybe in the next term, when she's not faced with having to win another election, maybe we'll get some more action out of her. I don't know. Remains to be seen. I hope so. But anyway, that whole poisoning thing is just ludicrous. It just helps to keep this concept in the air that there's this problem. We have to, like, yes, cannabis is good and it can work, but we got to keep these tight restrictions on it. It reminds me of like the story of prohibition. Leading up to the banning of cannabis in Congress, there were these strategically placed like articles that denounced cannabis and pointed out all the made up reefer madness issues that were utilized in the argument, and then they used those as the basis for this discussion to create that other prohibition. So it kind of reminds me of that.
Well, one thing I think it's fair to say that they're not making up numbers when they talk about increases in calls to the poison control hotline. I'm quite certain that's happened because now cannabis is a legalized product for everybody. I think we have 9.9 people and about 7 million adults. So 7 million adults now have access to this. So you should probably expect to see that. It's the interpretation of that increase that drives me crazy, because they want to make a one-to-one comparison between calls to a poison control center and evidence of children actually being in danger. And that's not true. Even the article itself, it even says they oftentimes get calls from physicians and law enforcement. So those are not child-related issues. Go ahead, Adam.
I bet if they put some sort of insignia on the side of the bag of sugar, calls would go up. I mean, this is
another hypocrisy. Yeah.
If any of you have had children, you know exactly what a sugared up child is all about. And nobody ever thinks to take their kid's blood sugar to make sure that it's not in the 400 or 500s where they should be rushed to the hospital. But they eat some candy that is obviously medicated, and it needs to be a statistic for no other reason than if they don't have it as a statistic, they can't talk poorly about it later.
Yeah, the other thing that they do,
negative outcomes here,
right? And the other thing they do to help to confirm this and create the illusion that cannabis is an issue, similar to what we've seen with like driving statistics and things like that, when cannabis is simply on the list of things involved in the situation, and they repackage it to make it appear as though it had a direct causal relationship to whatever the issue is. That happens with hospital calls and things like that too.
If you look at how they used to test for an accident, they never used to test for cannabis. They did an alcohol test, and if you didn't test positive for alcohol, they let it go. And now they test for cannabis to see if you have cannabis in your system.
And just being there makes,
right.
It gets to be able to be presented as if it has some kind of influence on whatever the issue was, when that's not determined simply by showing that it was there. So that's a problem that we've had in these statistics. And again, I just kind of think there's a similar strategy at large, maybe on, directly on purpose or being harnessed, opportunistically or something, but, creating these reasons why we have to make this move.
Right, Jamie. You can see the web being woven, right? I mean, we can see Cranes does a huge spread. They quote MCMA. We got WXYZ talking about this crazy stuff. By the way, the calls to the control center are the least reliable way to measure danger or problem. The better way to measure problems is emergency room visits or doctor's office calls. When you have someone in the doctor's office who diagnoses the child that way, that's recorded somewhere. So those numbers are available, and it's so low that they choose not to publish it. And they choose to use this as a number instead because it's the only number they have that would shock us. Otherwise, they'd be using emergency room visits because that's a much more real, frightening kind of a statistic.
I mean, on its face, calling cannabis a poison. I mean, there's issues with that, I guess, depending on usage, but I don't see by the common usage of poison how cannabis meets that criteria.
Well, it's interesting because you can't OD on.
And the reality too is, Adam,
you can't OD on it. There is no toxic level, so to call it a poison is somewhat of a misnomer. Unlike water.
Well, in 2018, on December 5th. About 350,000 people had authorization to use cannabis in the state of Michigan. On December 6th, it became 7 million adults, plus those, So you would absolutely expect everything associated with cannabis to increase at a rapid rate during that time period. It's not surprising, given exactly what was going on in the world at that time, that we would see a spike in these calls. It doesn't imply danger or damage.
Yeah.
People unfamiliar and I guess seeking information, and that's where the state says to call, which is also itself an issue, I think.
It even says above it, any questions, call the poison control hotline. Okay. So that people call with questions.
State could do a better job disseminating up-to-date information about cannabis.
So, Michael, if this happened in October, what has happened? I mean, like in the last few weeks, have you been trying to rebuild? I apologize if you've already talked about all this, but I was just reading the article and wondering if you've gotten your tractor back or if you've planted anything or what has happened. Oh, I think you're muted, though. I think you muted yourself.
So I finally started to pick myself back up out of the hole. I was talking about that earlier. It took me about 2 months of being depressed, trying to decide whether or not to even start some plants. The market is all over the place. Caregivers are shutting off daily. And it's really sad and disturbing. I came back to work at my office and just started spending time with my patients again as my office manager took another job. So I just didn't hire anyone else and just trying to get things back in order and in line and decide what I'm up for and what I want to do. I did finally put some plants back in the basement. I spent a lot of time in the basement this morning, cleaning up, getting things set up. So it feels good to have some plants again, and back to making, our CBD products. I'm hoping that by tomorrow I should finally have a license from the state on my hemp license, because that was part of my fight last year, was fighting with them about the CBD processing license, how they made CBD illegal on the hemp processing application, and it's not. So once they changed that application, I did reapply. So I'm hoping that none of these charges will get in the way of that. So we're kind of waiting to see. But yeah, so I'm picking it back up. I've got some things that I'm looking forward to for 2023 with doing a FICO line under the Tui's brand that I'm launching, and got some good partnerships to do with that for the rollout on the license side to bring those to market. And yeah, I'm really starting to feel better, recommitted kind of to the, to the industry, to the fight, was kind of on the burn and feeling like, what do we do with this industry? But there's still so much room to go. There's still so much education that has to happen. So I think sometimes we feel like, we got our rec and we won, and a lot of people get complacent with that. That there's still issues like I'm facing with now that are happening in the state. Like, we didn't win. Like, we won a small battle, but the war is still underway. It's not done. It's not over. Like, there's still a lot of states that don't have the rights that we have in Michigan. There's still
Well,
people.
we got to improve here,
Yeah, there's
as
still
you mentioned,
still a
So
lot of
next session, I mean, that's one of the things that's you kind of bring up, like what are some of the stuff that we should be addressing? We probably, I'll feel better about it when the lame duck period is over, but
what is that?
It's
the end of the
already
year.
over. They can't.
Yeah.
They,
Right. So like officially, they had a day of
They are
session.
done.
Yeah, they had a day of
Officially.
session.
Done.
What was it, last week? Well, they could choose to convene if they want to, but yeah, it is over pretty much. There was a change in power structure that took a lot of the wind out of the sails. Yeah, people split. That's why a bill we didn't like. There was not enough people in the Senate to pass one of the bills that required a supermajority that had the open-ended Michigan State Police funding language in it. So we dodged that. So next session, that stuff will be resumed. Stay on top of that. They'll be more looking at combining commercial licenses, maybe at when they say they're going to address some of these issues outside of the license system and some other things. I don't know if there's any legislation involved in that or what that looks like, but there's forces out there all the time trying to create restrictions and that type of thing. What the new version of that looks like next session, I don't know. But we should really be on top of that, be prepared to have discussions and meet with the newly elected people, obviously, as well as the incumbents, but try to set the pace a little bit better, and hope that the new composition of lawmakers is helpful too. And they combine the licenses. I mean, one of the reasons they did this was tried. We've talked about it lots of times at the end of the last session, so like 2 years ago, right around now or so, they were finishing up or deciding not to. I think we were still kind of concerned, and they pretty much decided not to.
The 19 to 20 session, right? The combining of the licensure for medical and adult use, so there'd just be one license program instead of the two separate, which is something that many cannabis patients fear. They feel like they'll get left behind. It's something we just couldn't support.
Right, and then also, well, the concept itself could be okay. In fact, it's going to happen one way or another because the medical program isn't that competitive. But it's always devil in the details. And there's too much extra shit in there, and didn't really like it. But a few things, to come to cover maybe patients 18 to 21. Or to have that covered in, can you just buy from stores or still require a caregiver necessarily or something like that? Remove, officially waive the excise tax for patients. There's just a few things we could do to bring these together that it wouldn't really have to be that complicated. But anytime there's a move to open up the act, people slide in all types of stuff. I mean, we brought it up, I think, last time too. The MSP language is in a bill that would, create a compact with Native Americans to join the state system, and for the state system to sell back into their system. And nothing against that concept at all. That was not to be construed with not liking the bill, at all, but just not liking that language in the bill.
Right. And I can't imagine being in the Native American system and wanting anything to do with the state system. Really, I don't know.
Well, they know they're going to produce things and would like the opportunity to have more places to sell it. That's part of the motivation.
Yeah.
Well, now in Traverse City, we're seeing it where the tribe chose to be part of the state license system instead of having a separate system. So the tribe, Grand Traverse Band of Ottawa and Chippewa, approved the dispensaries to operate on the property, right? But those dispensaries are all operating through state licensed product or with state licensed product. So somehow they're
Didn't like that at all. Was kind of aware of that process for a while, and we've had Mark and Tony Schnanek quit on here, and they were within that band, and Mark's sister's on council, I believe, and met with several people, and just really didn't like that direction, but they chose that was how they were going to get started with it.
It seems from the article that I read that really what they're doing is they set up a nonprofit, and then the nonprofit entity can operate in the regulated market. It's not unique to the tribal system because it's a traditional Michigan registered nonprofit, and that's how they have their interest in this company. The whole tribal restriction thing, as opposed to correcting the laws the CRA was suggesting.
And here's Mark confirming that the members don't like it. And that was one of the biggest problems. A lot of the community members just didn't have a voice in the whole thing, and they wanted it. And they wanted it to be written such that they benefited more from it or were more participatory in it.
Yeah. And you guys were talking about the poison stuff earlier. I mentioned, it's kind of crazy because I seen another article pop up on that stuff today. Like yesterday, I read one, and it's California pushing the lawsuits right now. Like we see the progressions of the industries, and everyone kind of cycles through the same things, and they're pushing a lot of lawsuits right now, and a lot of them are these MSOs that are now operating in Michigan. As like one of them was Cushy Punch was on there for a big lawsuit I seen yesterday.
$120 million or something.
128, I think it was. Largest settlement to date for a cannabis company, I think it said. And then the other one I seen come up today was Stizzy for having too potent and wrongly labeled THC potency. It's just so it's crazy to see, these things. And I'm curious with like companies like that, like does product liability cover these types of situations? You guys are legal analysis also. Like, what do you think about that?
I just think so. I guess that's part of the insurance is product liability, but to what degree and what the actual like circumstances are that meet the requirements and stuff, I don't know it that deeply, but yeah, it's part of the insurance coverage.
I mean, I could see one insurance company going under.
You are required to have product liability insurance.
Right.
You're required.
But what if they say it's like, every insurance company tries to skate on ever paying it?
That's what I mean. I don't know like the details of where the lines are, where they go, you didn't cross that T, sorry, you actually owe us money now.
Yeah, I can see one insurance company just going bankrupt if they had to pay out one of those bills. Like, we're out. File bankruptcy.
It's weird that that's so much. I mean, I don't know what all the details were on that case either, but it had to do with an injury, right? Or
the Cushy Punch one did contaminants. It sounded like in the edibles or vape. I can't remember which one it was. But yeah, it was talking about contaminants in the substance, and then which is crazy, to link it to it. They linked that one to a death, and then the other.
Well, I mean, even if that it's not ultimately causal, I mean, the fact that they were so irresponsible and let a product through probably when there were standards in place with a bunch of contaminants and shit in it, that's that's not going to look good right out of the gates for them.
You gotta love these MSOs that don't care about what they're giving us.
Well, that brings up the remediation discussion, which has been had a lot, and what it really means. And some people say you just can't sell remediated flower. I mean, if it gets turned into concentrates and passes the test, fine. But otherwise, just don't sell remediated flower, period. Other people are saying, in fact, the consumers now, which is probably more practical, just given the circumstances, would be at least let the consumer know whether or not it was remediated, bare minimum.
Yeah, that's something I think some more labeling requirements should really be pushed in the next session, and that's one of them. Is like I seen on a product I picked up, it said non-CRC. Like those types of things I think are important. On a label, like
What does non-TRC mean?
CRC is it's a filtration process for hydrocarbon extraction. So it's a series of filters that the oil goes through to be cleaned up or not cleaned up, and knowing that you can have a really good non-CRC product, versus something that, was garbage and cleaned up through the CRC machine filtration, those is just another thing, just like dealing with remediated flour. Like, do I want to know if my vape's been remediated also? I mean, it's the same thing. We're concentrating the contaminants that are in the flour, and we're complaining about it in the flour, but it's even highly concentrated, in the vapes. And then the standards, like what is the acceptable standard, like for rec market versus medical market? Like, I don't know.
For microbial like
Yeah.
parts per whatever the thing is, yeah, it's a lot more strict for medical. It's like probably.
But when everyone's just going to a rec market and then no consumer is being made aware of the difference in requirements, really, right?
Well, I guess is there a reason? Is there a really good reason to want one over the other, one that's more difficult to pass over the other one that's not, or necessarily?
I mean, wasn't it 10,000 ppm different or something for the
It's significant. Yeah. I know. I guess something like that. 100,000 versus 10,000. I think something that might be it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge difference,
right?
And those are contaminants. Like that's mold and bud rot, and and we're just like, everyone's okay with that. Like,
yeah, but I mean, I guess while we can say that, and it seems weird when you put it in that context in real life, where are the issues playing out?
Where's the harm?
Well, compared to the birds we used to smoke in our brickweed, Adam. I mean,
no, but the reality is that butane's harmful at 8,000 parts per million continuously for 8 hours.
Right.
We're not talking. I mean, I don't want to laugh at my friends because they're my friends, but I have friends that use hemp wick because they don't want to take a drag off a butane lighter. Completely safe.
Yeah.
If it wasn't safe, you wouldn't be able to do it. I mean,
and during emergency 19, in which Shelley Edkin, who we've described before, was in charge of the department. It's changed.
We just clarified, everybody, that that's a different Shelley than me.
It is a different Shelley than
I was
Shelley
trying
Smith.
to change my name. I was trying to get out and change my name to Smith. I'm like,
Shelley, not Edgerton, right?
Well, she oversaw the commercial system under emergency rule 19 before testing was required for the inventory being brought in by caregivers.
It was okay.
Never an issue that came as a result of that, and now she's the first one to say was trying to argue the anti-caregiver bills over this previous session, over the session that we're just about ready to end. How important it was to immediately get this testing standard in place, even for caregivers, just giving to their 5 immediately connected patients. It's so important and immediately necessary. So, just more of her hypocrisy. So, if we're going to have these testing things and say this is what we're going to show on the label, they should be accurate too. I mean, whether or not I really am concerned about it, if it's going to be in place and it's going to be on the label and on a product, they should all match up, and there's no reason why it doesn't. So some of the issues that we talked about with the labs and stuff last week too.
Or a 10% variance. Like, we all know this labs standard, should be, it's like fractions of a percent. So like, why does a label allow a 10% variance? Like, that can be kind of quite drastic to somebody.
I think it's because we don't know what we're doing. I mean,
100,000 is probably way overboard.
I think about, like, I almost never smoke weed that's been tested because I get it from people I know where it's grown, I trust them, I know what they use, and so I don't think about it as much as I used to when I was more in the commercial part of it. But also, I think years are going to pass and it's going to seem insane, all of the things that are going on right now. I mean, they already seem insane, but the fact that we're so hyper focused on this thing that has never been there before, and the
Wait,
little skill difference.
Things are tough for a lot of companies right now, and their level of like trying to do things in response to create better conditions too. I think is there's some desperation involved in some of this stuff that we're seeing.
Oh yeah.
wait till some kid who tells his father who invested $40 million into some cannabis company. Wait till the kid says, "Hey, Dad, you know, these people have been smoking weed for like 10,000 years. No problem. You just spent $2 million on a gas chromatograph to test the weed. Why do we need a machine to test the weed? The people test the weed." I mean,
Yeah. And the thing is I'm for like safe drug access, you know, like Michigan Safe Access, like having a way for people to test all kinds of drugs to make sure they're not getting anything really horrible. But I don't feel like that's even what we're testing for. You know, I don't want, yeah. Well, if you see the quality, yeah, that's why Spartan Grown, if you saw the quality of some of the product in these large shows. But I'm not going to buy that. I'm not even going to get close to those things. So
but a lot of these shops don't have the option of looking, smelling, reading labels almost. Like you're like, pick off the menu. You don't see it till you get to the car.
Yeah.
Like, so if it's not labeled and you can't see it, like there's definitely a big room to be boofed on some stuff still.
Right.
You know, I walk into Gage and, you know, I love cookies and what Burner's done kind of for like moving the culture and you know, and breaking out and really making it in a name. But like their stores with all the different licensing agreements and whatnot, like they're cheap. Even their top shelf stuff is garbage. Like you can't get, I mean, at least up here, I don't know about down there, but you know, I only went to the Detroit one once, but it's, you know, it's just I don't know, it's just crazy that I think the labeling requirements.
Well, brand's got to establish itself to feel comfortable grabbing
Also,
one and sight unseen and knowing that it's going to have some consistency of quality. But you know, other than that, when there was discussion about deli style, you know, versus package and whether there should be mandated packaging, you know, a lot of people showed out at the department when they had that discussion and in support of keeping the deli style.
I still think most of the public is not super educated. I mean, even when I talk to people who I know smoke or consume or whatever, they still don't know the difference between, they just don't. They're not educated. They want to go get some weed. They want it to be easy. But it's just like not everybody understands why one kind of meat is different than another, one kind of fish is different than another, one kind of, you know, like unless you just have decided as a grown-up to really care about what you're putting in your body, you're not even asking those questions. And then there's those people in the world who want to know where every single thing they're putting in their body comes from, and those people, when they get involved a little more, but I just don't think we're there yet. I think right now everybody's just like making stuff up, you know, like once the public at large is more educated, and it's hard to believe because we all live in sort of our world of everybody that knows everything about what's going on with the industry. But I talked to a person in my community a couple of weeks ago who I thought was very involved with a lot of different things. And I was talking about decriminalized nature, like mushroom, everything. And he goes, well, I don't really know anybody who uses mushrooms. I haven't heard about that for years. And I was like, every single person I know uses mushrooms. But he's a very involved member of the community who straight up said, I can't think of a single person that I know that is interested in mushrooms. And that means that I know a bunch of people that he knows. He just doesn't know. It's amazing, but so many people just don't care. They trust it. They trust the system. So I guess it's good to have things in place for that, just so people aren't getting poisoned. Like, I don't want anybody to be poisoned, but I think once the public is educated enough to not put up with certain things, to know how to call out bad product, I don't think they're educated enough to know how to call out bad product right now. Like, nobody's confident enough to go back and be like, this thing I bought here is bullshit. Like, I've grown for 10 years and this is not up to par. You can do that with food. You can do that with clothes. You can't really do that. I don't know if you can do that with weed, but I don't think people are educated enough to do it.
They did it with the vitamin E acetate carts. We've been down that before.
That's true. And that was poisonous. So thank God. I mean, that was right.
It was also used with like nicotine or just flavored
Yeah.
shit too, however else it was done.
Were people actually returning them?
I don't know.
Oh yeah, there was a recall on them, I believe.
The recall for the failed cartridges, yeah, in the licensed market. But like, was the consumer ever actually returning the product saying, hey, this doesn't meet our standards? Like, this doesn't, right? Is that even allowed to happen in the licensed market?
Yeah,
like,
I don't even know. Well,
can you take something back to a licensed?
I don't know. Well, from what I remember,
Here's what I've seen.
Yeah.
I can just tell you, I spend a lot of time in retail centers, and I do sometimes see people with that kind of an issue, whether it's CRA certified or not, just for customer relations. I see people take things back or exchange it. They said, I didn't realize this was only a 5 milligram, and I thought it was a 10 milligram, and I ate half the gummies and got nowhere. And they're like, no problem, let me just swap it out for you. That's a good retail establishment, but I don't know whether or not that's mandated or whether there's a way within the metric system in order to actually do that, other than through just a cannabis gift or something.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
You would have to buy the new product, buy the new product out and throw the old product away.
Yeah.
Well, I think what happened with the vitamin E acetate was there was a whole vaping sickness emergency. I mean, this is just my memory of it, is that it was like a vaping lung condition emergency that ended up being linked to the vitamin E acetate, correct?
Correct.
That's
figured out pretty quick.
Yeah, but I don't think
popcorn lung. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it was just individuals going, oh, let me make the connection between this and take this back to the
And there were sometimes, there were people using it like incredible amounts during the day, doing big like acrobatic stunts of making these huge like vape rings and jumping through and just using a shit ton of it.
Yeah,
that was part of the issue. Not good to have anyway, but that really excessive use really brought on some of those.
Humans aren't really a culture that naturally quickly learns about self-moderation. Like it takes stupid things to happen before humans will self-moderate. To tell people like, oh, I don't want to eat any more sugar today. People just don't even understand that. Why not? It's like, well, it makes me feel bad, but like, it doesn't matter. Some people do not care. They will do whatever they want. So I guess we're being, what I think sometimes is some of the people that get into regulation and stuff like that, they probably feel like they're helping people for their own good. They're placing restrictions on people for their own good, right? But if somebody is an alcoholic, they'll find something to drink, even though there's driving laws about it, and even though there's age laws about it. Like it's not the substance's fault, it's self-understanding. And the laws, I don't know if they're trying to help, if that's the direction that they're trying to go. I understand that to a degree, just because humans can be stupid, but I just think in a few years, this is all just going to seem so ridiculous. It has to, right? Like,
I'll tell you one of the things I do find ridiculous is that there are many, many, many people who did not smoke weed until it was legal.
Well, I understand that because I know plenty of people who never took a drink until they turned 21, because in their mind, they just accepted the law and did it, or they never drove a car until they were licensed.
But
Like some people just follow the law, even if it makes no sense. They don't become interested in something that has been deemed legally not for them. So they don't feel safe trying it. Other people just kind of live. I mean, we are by and large in my crew of people understand how laws are kind of made up on the spot, and not all of them really make a lot of sense. So, and in this country, there are lots of things right now, being married to someone of the same sex or of a different race. And, it's always been fine. It hasn't always been legal.
right.
So laws, some people I just don't think we're those people. We're those people that want to change laws. We're not those people who want to follow a stupid law. Or some people don't even question the law. They just go, oh, I'm not 21. I can't have a drink. Whereas some people don't want to drink. And so it's not the law. The laws are.
And I think most people that were smoking before it became legal are probably still continue to smoke, and probably most that didn't, who were adults and had it available to them, probably continued not to. Probably
Right.
Some people that tried it out. Hey, it's legal now, so I'm going to try it. I'm sure that happened. Whether or not they became regular users or not, I don't know. But
what happens person to person trust, I think, like anything, it's person to person trust. If you grow up in an area where everybody's against it and suspicious of it, and then you enter a new group of people, whatever it is, and that you like and trust them and see it's something, you have to have a personal experience to change your brain if you've been told your whole life that this thing, I remember how long it took for me to change my mind about, realizing, oh, weed doesn't make anybody lazy. All the people, I started thinking about, this is young. I was like, the people I know are doing startups in Silicon Valley and running marathons. And, not one single person I know that smokes weed is lazy. And that's what I've been fed my whole life. But it takes a long time for your belief and reality to sort itself out, because you've been programmed.
It's particularly difficult with cannabis because so many people, have internalized these things about it without ever really deciding to see if there's something substantive in support of believing these things about cannabis. You got generations of passing it down, just we're trying to peel that back. So it is a little bit of a process.
So for those people, now that weed is on the market, right? It's in the marketplace. They probably think all of these regulations are necessary because this dangerous thing has been released upon the population. And boy, do they hope that somebody in their right mind is up there. And what they don't realize, what I think a lot of people don't realize is, and I know y'all have been there, you go to one of these meetings and you realize that the people making decisions don't even know what the word vape means.
Right.
They don't understand how to make a medible. They don't understand how to grow. They don't know anything. They just start making laws. And once you experience that, then you go, oh, they're not protecting us. They're just it's not really protecting anyone, is what I'm saying.
In Michigan, by law, if you're involved, if you work for the CRA, you cannot use cannabis.
What?
So, the government employees can't.
State employees are forbidden from using cannabis, right?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
They would have a really good challenge if it's for medical reasons, but I don't think anybody may not have done that yet. I don't know.
And again, Shelley, these guys have heard me say this before, but I was at a private dinner one night many, many moons ago, and I told Carl Levin, our senator, that me and my people were coming with the PRA at the time. that we were going to legalize pot. And he said, man, you can pass whatever law you want. Me and my people make the rules, and we win every time.
Yeah. Yeah. And then those people are out there. That's the thing. I think if
That's
you're
what
not,
Michael's talking about. You know,
if you're
you have
not
the law,
right,
but then how it really
yeah,
plays
if
out.
you're not right
Right.
in the middle of it, seeing what's really going on, like if you've never seen anyone lie on a test, and you've never seen anyone grow terrible, terrible, terrible weed and act like it's great, and you know, because I've trimmed and helped at a lot of different farms, and some you're like, wow, you cannot sell this, and you see it go out.
Oh,
You go, well,
I almost want to have like a gladiator sesh where we bring all these stoners together in the middle of the room, and we put all these legislators watching because, of course, they can't participate. And we let these gladiator sesh type people
They're all
twist
scantily
up,
clad
roll
in
up, and
leather.
get high and just go to town while these other people watch, and they see that, you know, nothing happens here. I mean,
they know, though. They know. They just like having power. It's not knowing. It's just, it's not knowing. That's not what it is. It's liking power,
I mean,
right?
There's the law. Yeah,
Look,
trying to
here's
benefit themselves.
I think the
yes.
reality is most of these lawmakers went to college at a time when cannabis use was pretty rampant in the United States of America. So it's very logical to believe that many of them have had cannabis experiences before. So they may not be willing to admit it because of election reasons or whatever. Or they may take you aside and say, look, I was a really big head when I was at Harvard or whatever. But, you know, these people are not approaching it from a position of complete idiocy.
No.
Some of the things that they do, they choose to do. They choose to do the things like you know, screw with the patient caregiver relationship, and you know, propose letting drug courts be an exception for the Toohey case precedent.
Spartan Grown is appropriately saying he wants to participate.
I
Please
just think that
ask for a
so
picture of their
cool.
proposed costume.
So
I
he wants to,
Cool. And I think it would be even cooler if we like showed up while they were in session and just like fired up in the gallery, but I don't want to get in any trouble. So and the white guys with guns,
not over that
anyway.
You know, we've already done it on the Capitol steps. I mean, how much trouble are you really going to get in for doing it inside?
Get out of here.
And plus, we've all seen that it doesn't matter what rules you're following. That's the thing, because it doesn't matter. We've already seen people with guns enter the Capitol and enter and walk all around during session, and nothing happened to them.
Well, that was legal in Michigan at the time.
Okay.
It's not now, but it was at the time.
Right. But if it was.
And I have no problem with that. I always was hoping that would be our people smoking weed.
Yeah. It doesn't matter. They'll come get you where you feel safe, you know, like it's not right, Michael? I mean, like, it's not like you weren't trying to follow rules, you know, like the attempt to follow rules is not the protection. It's just those people's decision. It doesn't really have to do with the truth or anything. That's the crazy part, you know? Yeah. Good people don't need no laws and bad people don't follow them. Correct, Rob.
Sounds like a lyric from a country song.
It is.
Shelley, that's for you to
I just
probably
continue to compose.
I will.
And then give us a recital in the next couple of weeks.
So I want to show y'all something because, you know, we know this fight's been going on a long time. And I showed this to Rick and Jamie because I thought you might want it or you might know someone who wanted this. Somebody gave me a newspaper this is John and Yoko being taken away from Hash Bash. And then there's I think this is John Sinclair. This is like the paper from the announcement that the John Sinclair Freedom Rally was happening. So if you guys know anybody that connects, this is from
December of 1989.
1989. This is 1989. Free press. So
Well, they're just recounting the story then, probably.
Yeah, that's
yeah. And then
Okay.
there's
Yes.
Pop and Politics Mix and Lennon's documentary on John Sinclair's rally.
Ah,
Yes, that's what this story is about.
very nice.
So it's pretty interesting. It's just a reminder. In 1989, they were talking about the fight that was happening in 1971, and it's 2022, and there's been a lot of things done, and it's better, I think.
Mhm.
But it's still also insane because we're sitting here with Michael talking about this
It's weird. I know.
raid.
And his
Is it really
complaint.
a raid? That's so.
Well, I was
old.
able to read
Why
his
are we done
complaint,
with that?
and it reads as if there's no laws that were ever put into place. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
like we regressed 15, 20 years, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. It's amazing because you can look around and just drive around Ypsilanti. There's plenty of places to buy weed, right? You would never think in the same state somebody was being raided. It just,
They don't like competition.
yeah, I
It's
guess.
all, you know, a lot of this you know, is driven by people getting to the decision makers and saying stuff like, you know, these guys are just opening up shop without going through all the hoops and paying all the fees for the licensing and having to go
Wild
through
Wild West.
all these inspections and all this kind of shit and stuff. So you got to go after them because that's not fair, you know. And it's
Yeah.
you know, sometimes it's not necessarily fair, but there are some laws there, and the police and the prosecutors can't just blow them off.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, and that top group that you're talking about also have nothing to do with weed or cannabis or marijuana or anything else for substance that doesn't come in a white powdery bag. But it's a different crowd. That investment crowd, they're just looking for that return on investment that they were sold, and they're not going to get it back. And we're seeing that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you guys have been to a couple of industry end of the year type parties, right? Have y'all been to a couple?
Yeah.
So what are people?
I have, yes.
What are people like when people get up and talk about the state of affairs? What are people excited about for the next year? Like, what's the good news? Because I know plenty of caregivers that have gone out of business and all that, but I want to know when people go, yeah,
Good
this
news
year,
is,
what I'm looking forward to is this. That's what I'm curious about.
well, next session, hopefully being more involved and having more input sooner
Right.
on cannabis legislation to potentially stop some things that could go through if that's not the case for advocacy groups and concerned individuals and others who are aware of these issues, not helping to get the information to these lawmakers. So some things did not make it through, fortunately, because there was a shift in power, and I'm really happy that that was the way they decided to deal with it.
Right. They didn't shove it through. They just let it go.
Yeah, they didn't shove it down people's throats. It, you know, could happen in any given year, depending on, you know, other sets of circumstances that are going around at the time, and it did not. So, looking
One
forward
of the
to like
reasons
maybe
why
being more on
the
top of.
legislature ended up. Sorry, one of the reasons why the legislature ended already is because there's just no agreement between Republicans and Democrats on anything, and in order to accomplish what they wanted, they needed some bipartisan support, and there's no zeal for it. So they passed a few bills that we mentioned during last session's Jazz Cabbage Cafe. 3 bills were passed. that were related to cannabis, but none that we really felt were like a threat to anyone. And then they shut off shop.
The one that had the Michigan State Police language in it, the funding language, had already passed through the House and just had not been heard yet in committee of the Senate. So I was kind of concerned that bills that have already been that far, already had that kind of bipartisan support, might be on the list of those that they just kind of finish up, for the session. But of course it wasn't. There's enough senators just left that there wasn't that type of a count left to even make that official. So that was, I don't like the fact that some people didn't get what they wanted out of that actual bill. But I do like the fact that language didn't get passed.
Yeah. Well, that's a relief.
It's fine reading. It's just for like the colors.
I've got some positive news. This is a little swag cup from Bloom. And I was just in a show this past weekend at the Arc, and they sponsored the show. And they gave us 20 really stocked gift bags. And let me tell you how happy that made everybody in the cast. It was incredible. We were all very, very grateful for them doing that.
Very generous sponsor, huh? That's great.
Yeah.
Yes. Good job.
Good job, Dan. What's happening with Weeds and Reeds?
My friend just released a children's book. That was the first one in December. It was about a pug. And then I had already recorded a book called Worth the Fight, which was about kind of how psychedelics changed. It was someone I met actually at Hash Bash the first time. And I cannot remember her name for the life of me right now, but someone that I met at Hash Bash and in Theo Fest referred this book to me called Worth the Fight. And it was about, it was written by a man who was seeking some life changes and found ayahuasca and how that shifted his perspective and is now carrying on kind of that work with veterans in Florida doing these microdose group therapy sessions. And so we recorded it about a month ago, but I'm releasing that one in a couple of days.
That's a cool one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I really was like, gosh, I haven't checked in with this group in a while.
I saw you were on another show. I can't think of what it was, but I saw the post. You were just on a podcast as a guest.
Was I? I don't know. Oh, I was. No, I
didn't
did.
Like it. If you have to like.
Well, I've done a bunch. I've done a bunch of Reeds and Weeds episodes, and then I just did a show at the Arc in Ann Arbor, and I have a show coming up, but it's the 51st Joke Show. It's not podcast; it's live. So everyone should come to that. You can.
Maybe I saw like a throwback post or a memory or something like that, but.
Maybe you should, but you guys, it's on a Tuesday, January 3rd. So you could do a live remote Jazz Cabbage and then just come straight to Ann Arbor, or do it in Ann Arbor and then come straight to the show.
Do it at the venue right before the show.
Yeah, I'd be fine with that. It'd be pretty chaotic. I'll just tell you that right now. But
where's it going to go down? What's the location?
The Arc.
Oh, at the Arc. Okay, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. It's awesome show. So, and I got Entheo Fest as a sponsor and Blue Sage as a sponsor. So I'm very grateful for them. And it's 50 comedians doing their first new joke of the year. So every single comic tells a joke they've never told before. So
nice.
So it should be it's ridiculous. This is like my 8th year. Last year was canceled because of COVID. So I really, really want a huge turnout, because last year everybody just fell. Like I fell, my cast members kept falling. It was just, it sucked. It was like Omicron was rampant. It sucked. So there's 400 seats in the Arc, close to. I want to fill them. I want you guys to laugh together. I will offer Jazz Cabbage a few comps
Nice.
to encourage promotions.
I
in
encourage
reality,
it. That
I
sounds like
would
a lot
love
of fun, and I'm
I
definitely
would
going
love
to be
for
there.
you to come. Yeah, it's great.
What's the actual
January
schedule?
3rd, you said, right?
Yeah.
Tuesday, January 3rd.
And what times to start?
Starts at 8.
Well, I actually
And
have time because I do the show regularly and then drive over there, so that's what I'll do.
Tickets are already on sale at thearc.org. And it helps you get over that weird end of the holidays feeling where everything just stops. Nothing seems fun anymore. And then there's one more show. So that's how I think of it. It's a bridge show to get through the rest of the year. Yeah.
Perfect. That sounds awesome. I'm looking forward to that.
Yes. It's very fun. Oh, wait. I'll show you. I had a.
You said thearc.org, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is the poster, and I sent this artist a picture of my face with my hair teased out, and she made this. Isn't it
She
great?
made you look surprisingly more sane than you normally do.
See? Yeah, it'll be fun. It'll be fun. Michael, I hope you can come down. Love to
I
have
would not have. I would not have known that was your face if you didn't tell us. I would not have.
Oh, everybody did. It's my glasses, the red glasses and the hair. Maybe you have never seen me with my hair teased out and guns and stuff inside of my hair. That was probably what threw you.
Maybe you've never seen that.
Maybe
Just in
not that
case.
close.
You've never been out on a typical Friday night with Shelby.
Right.
Just in case.
So I have a question. Just kind of getting caught up again is like, are there any huge shows that have kind of crumbled recently? I feel like there's been these huge shifts in the industry since I last paid attention, and I'm curious about that. Anyone? Question for the panel?
Not really MSOs croaking out, but what we have seen are some very large chains combining. Common Citizen has been gobbling up other little things. Michael Elias was quoted heavily in the article from Cranes we just talked about a little earlier in the show. And I mean, mergers and acquisitions are really, really rampant right now in the state. And we have seen a lot of closures of places, a lot of people that are either not renewing their license or they're dropping their production. So
that's what I was wondering about. Just, I think it's because I happened to be at a place where a bunch of people had just been let go from a place.
Oh, that's real popular right now also.
A lot of people had been let go from a place that I thought was that does really swift business in this area. And so I was very surprised. And they just said, if people don't like it there, they just let them go and get new people right away. Instead of changing the system, they just get new people who don't hate them yet. It was sort of the picture that I got.
I just talked to a buddy of mine who was part of a 32-person layoff, and he was mentioning that he was making $18.50 an hour, and they could lay off all these people and bring in 15 people at $15 an hour. And you know, it doesn't seem like a lot, but for
saves them a lot of money, though.
Saves, right. For every so many people you lay off, you got another employee for nothing. So,
yep.
And this has been an employee that had been with them for 5 years, and he knew his stuff better than anybody. But that's not what they don't care about any of that.
Yeah.
Hey, I'd like to take a moment here. I know Shelley talked about COVID ravaging the theater community not that long ago. Anton Harb is normally on Jazz Cabbage Cafe, not on today because he and his family are struggling with COVID. So just a shout out to Anton for he and his folks to get better, and best wishes.
Definitely.
Absolutely. Yeah. Let's pray to get through this just next month and a half. 1 month and a half at a time with no COVID. I've had it 3 times. I'm over it.
Damn.
I got it once.
Right.
It likes me.
Well, so
Damn COVID.
it is. So let's go back to talking about cannabis companies shutting down or retracting. We've seen quite a few companies, losing workforce, shedding things, or like you said, Shelley, just completely revamping their entire sales floor because I believe that they think pretty much anybody can sell cannabis. And maybe that's true. If all you're doing is pulling bags off a hook and handing it to a customer because it's got a pretty lion on the cover, then, I guess anyone can do that. But to really be understanding of the cannabis plant itself and how it can benefit people and to have meaningful conversations with your customers, that's valuable. It just doesn't make sense to me to have a retailer that releases someone that has that level of competence.
But Rick, at the same time, you've been involved in retail of all kinds. You understand retail, and at no point in your life have you ever seen a retail establishment that needed 8 or 12 sales stations. Nobody's that busy that long. It just doesn't work that way. And I think part of what happened was these people went and built a model that was unsustainable. They expected full-time business at 8 or 12, salespeople. And it just, business doesn't work that way. Some days you're going to have slow days, and some days you're going to have busy days. And I don't think they ever thought of that. I really don't. I really don't think they ever had anybody like me or you who waited and waited and waited and waited for that first sale of the day. Never crossed their mind. Like
a lot of issues and
thick in your
projection.
stomach. Sorry, go on.
Not just there are a lot of issues in decision making, projections made by some of the big money interests that are finding themselves in less than desirable situations, and why people like Elias say this is because of the black market, and stuff. And they could have happened a little sooner because of the excessive growth thing, but in Michigan than maybe some people were thinking. But just helps to expose their lack of insight in a lot of ways. And we always talk about historical, cultural perspective. That's one thing. There's also like simply looking to see what the trends have been in other states, and not expecting the cost per unit to maintain at $3,000 a pound, and to be able to position themselves to be one of the few doing business at certain times, and all the other crap that's gone on.
But nowhere, and maybe I'm wrong on this, but where in the world does the black market affect the legitimate market? What market?
I don't think it does. I think it's assumed that it does, and it gets scapegoated.
It denies them customers, they believe. It denies them market share.
Any activity is not them. Yeah.
Right, but in any other industry, is that a problem?
Well, I don't go to dispensaries because I use the black market because their weed is better. So
is that the black market or is that the medical marijuana market?
it's well, I mean, it's my caregivers that have been my caregivers forever.
That's medical marijuana market.
Yeah.
Not the black market. Big difference.
It's big
difference. Yeah.
And
I want to differentiate, but I get it. We've called it something now. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, we shouldn't be, I guess, good point, contributing to vilifying, behavior that's not a big deal. And also, that's another exposure of the ignorance of these people who believe stuff like that.
That's been my attitude the whole time, is it's all about moving the ball forward. I think we've moved the ball forward far enough that nobody should care anymore about what's going on out there with
Yeah.
this weed, pot, marijuana, whatever you want to call it, which means there's guys out there that want to grow some plants in their house, so be it. If there's guys that want to go get a small little license to do it, so be it. But what do you care? It doesn't.
Yeah. I just don't want it. I want that ready for that part to be over.
No, don't. The ones that do kind of demonstrate themselves to being a little clueless.
And if there was harm to it, maybe I'd have a different opinion.
Yeah.
I think if it hurt people, if it needed to be dealt with in a different way, if there were these really for the children and with the things that we have heard for years, I don't think any of us would be dealing with it in this same way. Maybe we'd be in support, but we'd be realists about how we're going about it, and
well,
again, we haven't seen the evidence that it causes the issues that people are concerned with.
I've said this before. I'd really hate to ask the actuaries what the acceptable number of death is associated with marijuana, because there is one. Not that it exists, but there is one.
Or anything, yeah.
Correct, and I think people would be outraged.
That.
I think people would be outraged what it should be as compared to what it really is. With the amount of people that use it, but it's just not harmful.
I agree.
That's commitment right there, Rob.
It's just cannabis. And look, right now, as we talk about a lot of the issues with the market and that type of stuff, consumers at the end of it all are seeing some better times than have been there. I was just up north this weekend and got some fantastic prices on some great cannabis.
In retail,
about it. At a retail store, yep. I got a little bit of a discount too, but regular price for these eighths were like $15, and it was a list of that I would consider some of the better, more craft cannabis growers who are in the commercial system. Real Leaf Solutions, Alvarez. There were a few more, and it was just I got this orange cake pop from Alvarez.
All right.
Under $15 with a discount.
So answer me a question: was it deli style?
Yes.
What do you mean when you say deli style? Taking it out of a jar?
Take it out of the jar and weigh it up.
Take it out of a jar.
Package it up in front of you. Yeah.
Gotcha.
When was it harvested? Do you know?
No.
Yeah, that's my only concern is that
it's within decent time frames. I mean, because it came in and moved pretty quickly.
No, I agree. Because I don't think I ever got weed from my guy that was like older than a couple months, and that's because he gave me weed and then I went back and got more weed. And it was still that same crop. But I see weed coming out that's like 3 months before it's to market from the time it's harvested.
I've seen some long dates on packages. I've seen some packages that were over a year old. And of course,
I know
really is
that.
no expiration date on cannabis. So,
yeah.
No
but
problem.
It does tend to, like in the other markets, and it started in Michigan, that when they get older, it gets recognized and it's sold for cheaper because it's older or used with other promotional stuff or something like that. I mean, I've seen that a couple of times.
Yeah.
Probably not everywhere all the time. I'm sure probably people don't look, and a lot of it is sold and it just got through like that.
Well, I'll promote your GoFundMe and things like that, Michael. Is there anything else I can do to bring awareness to that? Is there anything else besides the GoFundMe?
You can buy his hemp products.
I put it in the private chat. I guess I can't comment on the regular comments.
I saved it.
The CBD products is what I've been known for all along. It's really my specialty. Anybody that is dealing with seizures or cancer, as far as consultations go, I am a certified medical assistant. I have, done clinics and been responsible for follow up and treatment of patient care since June of 2009. So I have a lot of, I did my externships at the Cowell Cancer Center. We still continue to share patients with them, that I get to have that integrated approach, being able to work with the cancer center as we work with our patients. So much so that there's even an imposter online impersonating me and ripping people
What?
off. Yeah, it's been going on for like 7 years. It's crazy.
I remember
It got me,
Really?
but it got me a $600 sale last week. It's just bad when the people actually like fall for it and send money out of desperation thinking they're going to get help, and they don't. So
Oh my gosh.
that. I know that in addition to like Josh Covert, being willing to help out and support of your case, we're also going to have some of Michael's CBD products in the stores too, in an effort to help support him. And some people donated to the GoFundMe thing, so there's
All
two
right.
different ways that it can be done.
yeah, so looking for new outlets, new connections for new retail outlets of the product. I've really sat back in the industry and just kind of watched to see how things unfold, and I haven't gone after any of the new market. Back in the day when this under the caregiver and medical marijuana program, like I was in most of the shops in Ann Arbor, and worked for a long time with Home of Medicine. I still am friends with Mark Passerini.
Jim Salame is
Jim is
sometimes just
great. Yeah,
yeah.
I used to work with Jim. And everything that you keep mentioning about the whole mushroom things. We do have one count for psilocybin. It is still a 1-year misdemeanor. They took my mushrooms off my desk, and they chopped a bunch of our cactus down, going after the peyote. They said,
And nothing has been returned. Somebody asked about that earlier. So your tractor, was that returned?
yeah, they haven't. Nope, nothing's been given back. They haven't even responded to the request for our stuff.
And those were Doc's guns. They were not given back yet.
Correct.
Right?
Those were
And nor
Doc
was the
Deadhead's
peyote,
guns.
which
And
is supposed to be a
like,
protected species and all that kind of stuff. We were wondering how that was going to play out or be viewed.
yeah, so on my charging document, it does list co-defendants, but no one else has been charged at this time. So I don't know if they have a longer time frame to be able to bring charges against Doc, than what they did for myself, or what, or if that time frame is extended to charge Doc because I've been charged over now, or so I'm kind of waiting on the attorney to see how that plays out. Doc was very vocal about taking responsibility for his portion of the things. He is on my lease, so he did rent space from me. It's some areas were his areas of control. And
Well, you were not charged for guns, so it's not like they're forcing that as an issue. Right?
Yeah, again, that's why I say, like, Traverse City, I feel like they knew they had to do something to try to cover their butt, and they just charged one count to try to see how it plays out in court. But like, they didn't come nearly as bad as I thought they would. Like, honestly, like with the way things played out, like, I mean, I've been pulled over and arrested for cannabis, and I had somebody else in the car, and they're also trying to charge that person for my bag of cannabis, right? Like, we've seen that play out in the past. Like, I've already claimed it, it's mine, but how you still charging him? So I was really curious to see, like, if any of that kind of old mentality would still roll out with how things have gone down, or just trumping up extra charges to really, really make it severe. Could have tried to do something with the guns, because even though they were in Doc's possession, it's still my house, right? Like, so there are different areas that they could have tried to come harder, and they didn't. So I'm really lucky, or feel grateful for that. but I also feel like knowing that I'm not going to plea bargain, they didn't need to trump up all those extra charges.
So, there's a standard,
And
uh,
so,
a standard, scenario in which you start fighting back, and then suddenly these other charges start showing up, and they start trying to, leverage it back the other way. I hope that doesn't go down for you.
yeah, I mean, right, as we beat one, then they just bring another one and back and forth. And how long can they do that? And it's
That's kind of why there's going to be a lot of time put in by Michael and meaning Kamorn in this case, and however Josh supports him and whoever else steps up from within his office, and maybe somebody else along the way. But it's like these little lot of little things throughout these processes that probably need to be checked, and all those things take time and are their own consideration and briefs and maybe filings and sometimes interlocutory appeals and just all that kind of shit in order to really do this. And they work also with the idea that people aren't going to use that much time and resources in order to fight something like this. And so that's kind of the reasons why some of the money is needed to be there. It's not like these guys are going to do stuff at like regular costs or anything, but there is a lot of extra resources or extra time needed, and some resources to help do all this stuff.
As much as we love our great cannabis attorneys, unfortunately, they still have bills to pay also, and we gotta, keep everybody afloat with how this goes. And they've been great, and like Josh donating. Josh has been great through this. I love working with Josh Covert. He's always been such an amazing part of our community, And then it was mentioned that hopefully we can get David Rudio on the phone and have a couple collaborations. And I've been in the middle of calls with David and Michael Kamorn before, where they're picking my brain about the hemp laws and hemp rulings. So I'm going to look forward to a couple of those reverse conversations where I can pick their
Rudoy coming on board would be awesome for that whole thing, man. I mean, and that type of support, really important to challenge this stuff.
Yeah.
Look, I just saw a press release out recently from Kamorn Law. Michael Kamorn talking about winning a case against drug recognition experts in the appellate court, which seems, according to Kamorn Law, to disallow drug recognition experts from giving testimony as to your state of intoxication when it comes to things like alcohol and cannabis, which throws the whole DRE program right into the trash, as far as I'm concerned. So that's
and
the
in addition,
of people we're talking about in this case.
In addition to that, remember the Michigan State Police blood testing fiasco, and when they were saying, yeah, but even though this was present, there's still all these other things that corroborate something too. So the cases that had like DRE support and blah blah blah, so that no longer is supporting evidence. So it's been this list of non-scientific things upon non-scientific things, helping to build up enough to actually charge somebody, and it's been really fucked up. Just instead of realizing there's not a thing there, they keep on forcing all these weird, not false positives.
That's not my job. It seems just like such a lame job. Do you know what I mean? It's such a lame job to be a regulator, someone who just isn't involved in the creation or healing or tending the earth, but they're just like,
well, they don't care about any of those things.
They're just like putting rules around everything and making you fill out paperwork. It's like, God, I'm so glad I don't have a bureaucratic job, a job that kind of depends on bureaucracy. I just couldn't do it.
Michael, do you decarb CBD before infusing it into coconut oil?
So I was just reading that, and if you got a second, so I know we're getting close on time. So I'm one of the only people I've noticed in the past that has done a CBD-A tincture. Okay. When I've done CBD-A, CBD, I've done CBD and CBD-A in a 1-to-1 ratio. I've played around with that, and I've done it with our seizure patients, okay, to see if there's any kind of differences in response between CBD and CBD-A. What I have noticed is that
Meaning
Does it?
CBDA would be converted to CBD with heat, and that's what he's asking about.
Is the decarboxylation
Right.
process. Thank you for
Yeah.
clarifying. Sometimes we assume everyone knows what we're talking about, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And that's my fault.
Can you
The,
define, because I was afraid to ask this for years and years, but can you define what you mean by decarboxylate? Because I didn't realize it was as simple as it was.
So it's heating. So in our oil process, it's like heating your oil to the temperature of 225, they say, for 15, 20 minutes. You can also stir it, make sure all your bubbles are out of it. When the bubbles are done, coming off of it, the gas from the acid vapor, the decarboxylation process is released. The extra molecule is released and it is degassed. That's part of the decarboxylation process. So normally everyone decarboxylates their CBD. I have a real good leaning toward like it doesn't really matter if it's decarboxylated or not, that CBD is going to do what CBD needs to do.
It's interesting. Don't people compare response from THCA to CBD?
Yeah. So before I knew what CBD really was, right, when we would look at non-psychoactive components, I was making THCA tinctures to try to work with kids, right? Until we got a CBD plant and really started working the CBD. So there is some similarities to that. The body still decarboxylates some of it in the transition and the conversion through when you take it, but not nearly the full amount of it. So it just depends on like what you're looking for. THCA had more scientific backing as well for treating cancer than some of the early THC studies. So that's where we would look at doing THCA because you could do non-psychoactive components, non-euphoric high, and then adding the CBD and keeping somebody that didn't have a tolerance to help them to slowly develop a tolerance as they begin to take it. So.
Can I ask you, as a caregiver who knows a lot about CBD and pain medication, I would really like to find a strain that is a powerful pain reliever for joint pains. I'm using this roller thing right now, this 900 milligram CBD roller on my arms right now and on my knee. And have you found anything that is a powerful pain relieving consumable that is not a high? Because I would be ordering that from you.
So the Canatonic number 4 has been my baby for all of the years. The Canatonic number 4 has been listed as the #1 pain relieving strain in the country by Herb.
And do you have like the like a 20-to-1 version or like a 12 to 14-to-1 version or?
So I call it my 20-to-1. We can see 30-to-1 sometimes based on the, normally I tell people that ratio is not going to change, right? Like I seen somebody release a 4-to-3 ratio and they called it a Canatonic 4. I don't believe you're ever going to see that much variance, but like the 20-to-1, the 30-to-1, like that kind of a ratio, because we've learned how to minimize the THC effect by emphasizing the overall CBD in the plant. I have seen that kind of change. Again, then back to test results. Like every lab's different. I don't know how many of the labs I trust anymore. I can't wait for Linda to be able to reopen the spot, and even though she has to do it with a partner. It's just there's not a lot of labs that I trust. I see more of them keep opening. I guess I need to go tour them and vet them and, and see who knows what they're actually doing, because I've never trusted a lot.
We had people from Abco on here last week. They were
Not
very
heard of that
helpful
one
with a
yet.
lot of really good information. So
where are they out of?
Warren, Michigan.
Warren, so downstate. Okay. Yeah, see, I'm up north, so I don't get all the information as much as I would like to stay on top of things. I try to stay involved in the actual making the product and treating the patients that need it. So, but the Canatonic number 4, we do it in a cherry tincture. We have some gummies, different edibles, dried cherries. We do a dehydrated tart cherry that is formulated specifically toward migraines. So I've had EMTs and doctors and things that have come up to me and told me that it's one of the only things that's ever worked for their migraines.
The CBD tart cherry can of fruits, those?
Yeah.
what's in the cherry that is believed to help out with the pain relief or the headache relief.
I take cherry as a I started taking cherry syrup one time when I was on this cleanse. You take it before bed because it's supposed to cherry concentrated cherry syrup is supposed to be really good for like relaxing your body to go to bed. I know
It's
that.
natural melatonin.
Mm-hmm.
It's a natural lubricant. It helps to trigger glucosamine response. So lubricating the joints. There's pages and pages of benefits to the tart cherry concentrate and the tart cherries. So, and the migraine one is honestly what I add to it, and that what really affects and helps it, besides the anti-inflammatory property of the CBD, is a B12 additive. So many times that we forget we are so much like our plants, right? You know how much I've learned about our human function of our body just because of learning our plant and the food and the life cycles of the plant.
People
I
be
mean, we are
surprised
not,
how similar some plants are physiologically. There's some plants that are like 40-50% similar, something like that.
they're not that much different. They take
Yeah.
up a lot of water. It's a huge water content. They all need the essential vitamins and building blocks, right? Just like we do. It's so similar, taking care of ourselves. I've learned to take care of myself better by taking care of my plants better, like learning.
Chimpanzees are more similar, for a record. But
Oh, thanks.
Well, I recently this friend of mine who was she's a what do you call it, an esthetician. She does skincare and waxing and stuff. And I was just like, I don't know what's going on with me. Everything. She's like, oh,
probably an oily T-spot.
Get a
Get it,
humidifier. And I realized that I put humidifiers in a couple of the rooms of my house, and my plants, like my plants are loving it too, because the heat in this room is just sucking the moisture out. And it's not just me, it's my plants. So I think about it every time I'm like arranging my plants around the humidifier. We both need it.
Yep. So, Michael, anything you want to make sure you get in, man, before we wrap it up today? We'll go over some. Let me see. Go ahead, and I'll throw some of these addresses.
So again, I'm not one to normally ask for help. Any help right now is greatly appreciated. I'm trying to make sure that I can maintain and stay in this industry. I don't want to say things, but I'm one person that this industry I don't think can afford to lose. I've been very consistent in what I've done for the last 14 years. I've done pretty much everything I've said I was going to do. The ups, the downs, the good, the bad, the good years, the broke years. I've stayed to my motto. I've stayed true to my passions, my beliefs, and my service of my community. And, and I'm not just asking for the donations. Like, again, the new CBD accounts. If you're using CBD, check out our CBD products. Give us a chance to show you why our product is superior to any other CBD product on the market. So any help at all is, greatly appreciated. So,
we didn't mention it, but let's throw it in. It was, Michael continued his fight with Attorney Comorn from a previous issue to the higher courts to get a very important published ruling, which is now law of the land, that people can continue to use their cannabis medicine while on probation or bond. And that was very important, very celebrated. So support is needed. I agree with it. Let's refute this type of activity against us, in this new enforcement division that's designed around finding these things and doing it. Let's really challenge this and make sure if they're going to make a move, it's for something that's, not just a little bit of cannabis activity in the legal world. Jesus. So
can I ask you if I'm trying to order something right now, can it be delivered if it's CBD?
Yeah, everything we ship to all 50 states.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
And Shelly, anything you want to add in?
No, except I want to offer Jazz Cabbage 5 tickets to 51st Jokes.
All right.
Y'all can bring a little crew after you tape that day, and have a great after party at 51st Jokes.
I like it. I like it all. I'm looking forward to it.
Yay.
Thank you very much.
Sounds like fun.
Adam, you want to? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Michael.
I want to say to that doctor alone, if you want to reach out to me, it seems like you were going through a lot more questions or test results. I'd be happy to talk to you
We've
more.
been through a lot of shit, man. I mean, it sounds like you guys might be able to connect on a couple different levels, and that'd probably be cool.
And thank you, Mark, and everybody that turned in. John, love seeing you. Thank you for the support. You guys got a great following of people. Richard's been great with the comments throughout the show. I love seeing the engagement. Thank you guys for the support.
A lot of people want to support you in this too, man. So, Adam, anything you want to get in before we wrap it up?
Not really. Just happy to have Michael on the show, and not quite sure they decided to, hit the hornet's nest. But I know he's not going anywhere, and this is a fight. So something's not making sense enough. I can't wait to figure it out. But
There's still a lot of pressure on stuff that's from some powerful interests. That's part of it, I'm sure. So
I just ordered, Michael.
hey, cool. Everybody can follow suit and do what Shelly just did. And thanks everybody for coming on. Shelly, haven't been a while. Thanks for coming on for the whole time. Michael, getting around, letting people know about this. Medical Mondays last night, us today. Appreciate it. Rick, want to wrap us up?
I do, and I'll tell you, there's a lot of reasons for optimism. A lot of encouraging things we heard today, and then also some challenges too. The one thing 2023 is going to have is the same thing 2022 had: a lot of drama, a lot of action, a lot of reasons for people to remain engaged. If you take one thing away from the show today, it's that your continued support can make a difference in a person like Michael Tui's case, or in shaping of new legislation that might be proposed in early 2023. You can't drop out, guys. Got to stay active. Got to keep in the game. That's my message.
Excellent. Thank you once again, Rick, for that. We'll do kind of an end of the year thing next week. End of the year in review, and maybe look forward to next year a little bit. All right. Thanks a lot, you guys. See you next week.
Bye.
Thanks for having me.